As we showed you at the top, the House is divided over reimposing mask mandates. The move to mask up comes at the recommendation of the chamber's physician, who said that people are required to wear face coverings again inside the chamber, office buildings, and in committee meetings. Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy tweeted the return to masks is a decision, quote, conjured up by liberal government officials who want to continue to live in a perpetual pandemic state. He continued that criticism on the House floor, to which Democratic Congressman Tim Ryan of Ohio responded.
You know, if you read the CDC recommendation, it said you only should wear the mask for the hot spots. I'm sure the gentlemen on the other side know which states and which cities are hot spots, because those are the facts. You could see the facts. You could read the facts. You could understand the facts. So what is Washington? The vaccination rate for the members of Congress is over 85%. And as of today, the transmission rate on the Capitol campus is less than 1%. Well, the facts would tell us this isn't a hot spot, so the CDC recommendation doesn't apply to us.
Look, the attending physician of the United States Capitol, the top doctor for Congress, asks us to put on masks when we come to a chamber with 435 people. I may not be from a hot spot. Speaker may not be from a hot spot. Speaker Pelosi may not be from a hot spot. Somebody in this chamber is coming from a hot spot. Somebody represents the hot spots. And they get in a plane and they fly here and they interact with all of us. I just find it absolutely immature and appalling to somehow diminish it to try to score cheap political points. And that's exactly what we saw a few minutes ago. That is beneath a minority leader of one of the major political parties in the United States of America, saying we should take no caution that someone from a hot spot is working in this chamber and could potentially get someone infected that could go home to a sick parent or an immune-compromised kid. That is beneath us. That is beneath us.
It's so reckless. It was so reckless and so dumb of Kevin McCarthy. I wonder if, like Homer Simpson, after they cut the tape, if he's tried to stick crayons up his nose. I mean, it's insane. Jake Sherman, I had just said
what are you doing?
that have your loved one talk to a physician that they know. And there you have Kevin McCarthy ignoring the advice of the attending physician, understanding that members in that chamber go back and forth. Members of Congress, when I was in there, they still do. You fly back and forth to your district, every 3 or 4 days a lot of times. And you're in your district and you're going to town hall meetings and you're going to events and you are surrounded by people. So, yes, for the 100 or so members or 50 members that come from hotspots, there's a really good chance somebody's going to bring the Delta variant back into that chamber and pass it along and kill somebody, or maybe have them go home and get somebody really sick in their family. It's just not hard. And again, you wonder how low the Republican Party will go. You wonder how low Kevin McCarthy will go. You ask the question, is Kevin McCarthy really that stupid? And many would say that's a rhetorical question. I don't know, Jake. I won't make you answer that one. But talk about the back and forth you just saw between McCarthy and Ryan.
Buried in what McCarthy said is that 65 members, all of Kevin's party, are not vaccinated. So 85% of the House is vaccinated. So that means 15% are not, which is roughly 60-something members of Congress who have either said something stupid like, don't talk, like you're violating my HIPAA by asking me if I'm vaccinated. I wear a mask at the Capitol because I don't want to give it to my unvaccinated children. A lot of reporters do that. A lot of members do that. So not only are they coming from hotspots. They're traveling through airports like Dallas and Atlanta and Chicago and Denver, where there's a mix of people every couple days who could be carrying the virus. And so I just don't want my kids and my unvaccinated children to get sick. And I think a lot of people feel that. Now, there are big bipartisan complaints about the attending physician who has not been forthcoming with information, who did not get tourists out of the Capitol quick enough, who has not been clear about why he's making some decisions. And those are all legitimate gripes with the attending physician. But you have to be an idiot to not understand that the Delta variant is raging here. And there's just real risk for unvaccinated people. And all of us in the Capitol, many of us are around unvaccinated children. And just listen, I'm very frustrated by this. My patience with people who are putting me and my kids not me, but my kids at risk is really dwindling. And that's not a partisan issue for me. I just want people to just shut up and wear masks because I can't take the questions from my wife anymore, who's being more responsible than me. But I just, this has been a problem since we got into this pandemic, that people don't listen to the advice of doctors. And I'll stop after this. I mean, we're not having a theoretical debate here. I'm not a doctor. I could read the science, but if a doctor tells me to do something, I'm going to do it even if it's inconvenient to me, because we live in a society with other human beings. And we have to be, my wife sent me a photo the other day from a hotel in California that had people who are anti-maskers. And there was a sign that said, look in this mirror if you're not wearing a mask, because you're around the only person that you care about. Which I thought is a really good example of just how stupid people are. And you know what? McCarthy, I'm not defending him here, but he has a conference full of people who don't believe in science, don't believe in medicine, and that's what he's representing here. And it's disappointing to me and to people who are going to be around people who are susceptible to this virus.
Well, and again, if they don't care about anybody else outside of their family, worry about their children, worry about other people's children, worry about their loved ones. As we had in a report from Dr. Dave earlier this week in Alabama, the emergency rooms, a lot more children this year than there were last year with the Delta variant. I'm hearing the same thing out of Florida, emergency rooms and hospitals, that the pediatric wards are finding a lot more of an impact for younger children this year than last year because of the Delta variant. So, Mika, there is so much at stake here, and I do expect more members of the press getting angry about the fact that a lot of these jackasses are literally putting their children's lives in danger because they're trying to make a political point, a stupid political point, but a political point all the same. It's just like last year in the middle of a pandemic that killed over 600,000. That's killed over 600,000 people. What was it? It was Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, was making fun of Jake. It may have been you. You sure do look funny in that mask. Making fun of it. Like, me. This is just it was you.
To which Jake said, "We don't want to die."
Well, and we don't want our children to end up in the hospital, and we don't want our parents to die, and we don't want. This is not hard, Mika. It's not hard.
That's the thing. It's simple science, and what Kevin McCarthy is doing is malpractice.